When you reach that level, you can still be brought down to the Stone Age again by some external catastrophe. That's frightening to people, and that is inherently destabilizing to the body politic. So they're never going to admit that any of this stuff is true. They're going to have to be, basically, we're going to have to put their arms behind their back, twist their arm and make them admit it, because they're not going to admit it voluntarily, because it is a threat to the existing cultural milieu that we've created.
This is Little by Little with Andy Schectman.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Little by Little, and this one's a little bit different. I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the last several months Mike Bara, who is on with us today. Mike is known as a New York Times best-selling author, a lecturer, a podcaster, a TV personality, and I will say an all-around damn good guy. I have been on Mike's show, and I am on with him every now and again Wednesday nights with Mark Z. It's good to have you here, brother. Thanks for coming, Mike.
Yeah, any time. And if you think I'm an all-around good guy, you don't know me very well, Andy.
Well, you know what? You certainly come across that way. And one of these days when I get out to Vegas, we're going to spend some time together, and we are
going to hang. It's funny. There's a guy named Richard Doty who's very, very big in the UFO community, and he used to be an insider. He used to be on the inside, and he's kind of retired and been released from the intelligence community, and he kind of has a notorious reputation. A lot of people think he drove some people crazy with his disinformation campaigns and stuff. I found him to be interesting and intelligent, but he said, I kind of had heard of you, but I didn't really know about you. And so I looked you up, and he goes, it really comes down to is people either love you or they hate you. I said,
well, I'm in the first camp, brother. And that's why I have you on here today. I wasn't going to do this, but you just rang my bell here. Why don't you tell people a little bit about your background? Because this is not the typical financial podcast, and this is something that is compelling and interesting to me. I wanted to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your background, what has made you that best-selling author and lecturer, because I think that's what people need to know here first and foremost.
Well, I kind of grew up fairly conventionally. I always had an interest in UFOs and aliens from the time I was a little kid. I didn't watch Star Trek and Lost in Space and then get interested in aliens. I watched them because I was already interested in aliens from the time I was just a little tyke. And I always had that in the background. And I went through the normal life, grew up, went to school, did a little bit of college. And then, I was kind of like, well, I'm kind of wasting my mom and dad's money here. I don't really know what I want to do. So Dad, can you get me a job at Boeing? Got me a job at Boeing as a draftsman back in the days when we still did, ink and Mylar. And then I just became a career. I became an engineer, aerospace structural engineer, and worked on all the Boeing planes and MX missile, and had secret clearances and did stuff, and moved from company to company, got married. And then I got a great job with Northrop Grumman in LA. And right about that same time, I'd started working with a guy named Richard C. Hoagland. And Hoagland was pretty famous in the whole UFO thing. His big thing was the so-called face on Mars, which appears to be a sculpted human face. And I'm like, this really attracts my engineering mind, because this is not lights in the sky. This is not blurry videotape. This is not, little gray guys with big black eyes in the middle of the night, impregnating you and giving you their half-breed alien babies. This is stuff that if we can get good pictures, we can put our fingers on, and we can say this is real or this is not real in terms of artificial stuff. And it would, set things off in a new direction. So I got excited about that. I ended up, through a series of non-coincidental connections, working with the guy, writing for his website. And and it took off from there. That's the original picture of the face on Mars from Viking in 1976. I ended up writing for him. And then one day I said, why don't we just take all these articles and put them into a book? Because people do not respect that which they don't pay for. And it was like, we're constantly repeating ourselves. I said, let's put it into a book. And believe it or not, that's when people will really go for it. So we worked on that together. It took a long time because I had moved to LA, gotten a divorce, and was really enjoying my life, making a ton of money. Really enjoying being single again after 20 some years. And we got it done in 2007. It took off. It was a New York Times bestseller, thanks to George Norrie and the folks at Coast to Coast AM. And then, Richard and I couldn't really agree on a sequel, so I kind of went off on my own. I started writing about physics and spirituality and how they're connected and looking at the future. And, it's funny because I talked about governments, institutions, and financial and banking institutions were going to come under all this pressure because of the physics was changing human consciousness. And I kind of said, look, 2012, the window opens, 2024, the window closes. I think we're right here at the end of it. I think, there's all this upheaval that we see in government and in worldwide politics. It's kind of funny because I go back and look at that second book, The Choice, and I'm like, I kind of predicted all this. So I feel pretty pumped up about that. And, and then along the way, I kind of knew Giorgio Tsoukalos a little bit. I put him in some documentaries, and when he started Ancient Aliens, he recommended me for season 2. I started doing television. I co-starred with William Shatner on some episodes, with President Trump on another episode. If I ever meet President Trump, I'm going to go, hey, there's my co-star from America's Book of Secrets, the guy who got FaceTime after I got FaceTime on that show. So here I am. You just say yes to everything, and whether you think you can do it or not, you just do it. You figure out a way to do it, and you end up in a good place.
Well, and I found out next to you there, you have Hecklefish, and I found out that you've contributed to, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, to the Y-Files, which is a show that I find to be fantastic. It's on YouTube. People should check it out. I find it to be one of the most intriguing shows I've ever watched online, and I'm addicted to it. And then one night I'm laying in bed watching it, and I see your face pop up. I'm like, no way. So, I think, I like Joe Rogan. And when I watch Joe Rogan, his episodes that talk about the Great Pyramids and talk about things like this intrigue me. In fact, the first question I'm going to ask you is about the Great Pyramid. And I took the liberty of kind of writing down some of the things about the Great Pyramid. And I want to read, and I want to get your point or your viewpoint on it. By the way, that face on Mars is uncanny. I mean, I suppose it could be just shadows and whatnot from the Viking spaceship or whatever that was called, but the picture's kind of crazy.
Well, we now have hundreds more pictures of it, and the closer you look at it, the more artificial it becomes. So it's one of those things where I feel like we won that debate 25 years ago. That's in the back pocket. And
and this is why people need to watch these shows, because they dig much deeper into it. I would suggest people check it out. Anyways, I want to read something about the Great Pyramid. Want to get your take on it while we're done. I got a couple questions at the end of it, but I don't think people understand, and I'm not even getting into the part of the interior, which has different forms of limestone and quartz and how it makes an electrical charge, and this is where it gets into Nikola Tesla and all this kind of stuff. You may want to go there, but I want to read a few things, all right? I want people to keep this in mind as we talk about how the hell did this happen? All right. First of all, before I even ask you, how long ago do they assume the Great Pyramid was built? Do you know?
Yeah, about 2,500 to 3,300 BC. So we're talking about 5,000 years ago, I think, is when people generally think they were built. And nobody knows really for sure, but that's kind of the canonical interpretation, although there are other people who say, oh, they're much older than that. So.
All right, right on. So a long time ago, right? So here are some of the statistics that absolutely blew me away when I first watched this episode on the Y-Files. Actually, my dad said, you got to watch this. This one in the Hollow Moon. And as crazy as the Hollow Moon one sounds, you watch it and you'll come away from it saying, holy crap, that it makes you go, what the hell?
That one blew AJ's mind too. That one blew AJ's mind.
It blew my mind. And I mean, I'm not just saying that because look, there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. And I left my tinfoil hat in the other room, but none of that. When you watch this show, what AJ does is back a lot of it up with facts and science, and it's like, wow. All right, so let's get to the point here. The Great Pyramid is made of 2.5 million blocks of stone, weighing over 6 million tons. piled 481 feet high. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Well, its footprint is over 13 acres. Here's the crazy part, starting anyway. The sides of the pyramid are aligned with such accuracy that only modern equipment could match it. To align the structure to 1/15th of a degree of true north is all but impossible. The base of the pyramid is level to within 3/4 of an inch. Without the assistance of modern lasers, once again, all but impossible. Now, here's the really crazy part as we go on here talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza. The sides of the pyramid are over 755 feet long, made with stone blocks that weigh between 2 and 40 tons each. Each side is within 2 inches of one another. That's 99.98% accurate. Now, this is the part that freaked me out more than anything. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get 3,938.685 miles, which is within 11 miles of the polar radius of the planet. That's 99.8% accurate. If you take the base of the pyramid and multiply it also by 43,200, you get 24,734.94 miles. That is the circumference of the Earth at the equator within 99.3% accuracy. Goes on to say that the Egyptians were obsessed with the equinoxes. That's when the length of the day and the night are the same length. The length of the day and night during an equinox is, guess what? 43,200 seconds. The Great Pyramid used to be covered in limestone found in a quarry over 500 miles away from the site of the pyramid. That's like carrying thousands of tons of 10-ton stone blocks the entire length of the state of Florida. So my question to you is, do you believe these alignments convey a message or serve a function beyond their symbolic value? And what do you make of the correlation between pyramid building societies across the world despite being separated by continents?
Okay, yeah, the measurements are precise. They are very, very precise. They're about as good as we could do today. It shows, and it is meant to show, I believe, an intelligence and a very advanced engineering science that the Egyptians had, or whoever built the pyramids had. You know, a lot of people say aliens built the pyramids, but the point is that they are conveying the message that we know the circumference of the Earth. We know the polar radius of the Earth. We know all these things. How did we get this knowledge? And to me, what it shows is that humanity started smarter after the flood and then got dumber, and now we're getting smarter again. And that is completely at odds with the historical record, or what they would like us to believe historically, where we went from, stupid old cavemen with their stone knives and bear skins to smart old us with our hydrogen bombs and our striped toothpaste in one straight line. And it appears we do not go like that. We go up and down, and maybe up and down cyclically over and over again. So these were intended to show whoever found these eons from the time they were built that, yeah, we knew our stuff. And you got to wonder, how did they know this stuff? Where did this knowledge come from? What was the advanced civilization before? Was it human? Was it from somewhere else? And of course, my focus is on looking at similar objects and similar types of alignments on Mars and on the moon and stuff like that, which I think they're like self-verifying. They reinforce each other, the two arguments. So it shows me that the Egyptians knew their stuff. They knew what they were talking about. And again, some of these stones, like you said, they're 40 tons. They literally couldn't be cut. They couldn't be transported, not with the technology that we believe existed. I just saw a thing on Twitter the other day, Twitter X, one of these little tiny 1-ton blocks. Oh, they cut this. Look at these two workers cut this using tools and equipment from the time. Well, that's fine for the little ones, but a 40-ton megalithic block, human beings could not have cut these and placed them at an angle, in the pyramids, in some of the passageways. It's impossible. And we really haven't studied the interior of the pyramid that well. So there could even be bigger blocks inside that we don't know about. So some sort of technology that we don't understand, and I have my theories about that, was responsible for building these things. And it was not wood and bitumen and rolling blocks along, wooden roads with manual labor. That did not happen. So it indicates that our history is completely different than we've been taught.
100%. And I mean, how would you, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but how would you know the circumference of the Earth at the equator? And how would you know the polar radius of the planet 5,000 years ago? How would that even be possible? Is there a logical answer to that question?
Well, you could circumnavigate the globe. The question then becomes, how did we learn this ourselves? How did we learn it? And we flew. We got up into the sky, we got up into space, and we made measurements, and that's how we came to know these numbers from our own science.
Yeah, but 5,000 years ago, how would they have done that?
Fly up into space and take measurements. That's about it. That's really the only explanation. So I don't know. It's not possible from what I understand, for us to have known that. It was a big deal when Eratosthenes figured out that the Earth was spherical by simply measuring the shadows at the exact same time of day in two places, about 100 miles apart. And and that was way back in the Greek ancient times. So who knows, it has to be that they had some sort of help. And whether that help was a collapsed ancient human civilization that's kind of been hiding behind the scenes for the last 2,000 to 5,000 years, or whether they came from somewhere else, is the big debate.
Yeah, and it's uncanny that the length of the equinox is 43,200 seconds, and multiplying those numbers, you get, it's just crazy.
Well, and then you look at stuff like, the precession of the equinoxes, right, which is a big part of this, the precessional cycle of the Earth. Each one of the ages, the age of Aquarius, which you're just coming into, is going to be 2,160 years. We just got out of the occulted age of Pisces, 2,160 years. Exactly. Guess what the exact diameter in miles is of the moon? 2,160 miles. It is not 2,159 miles, and it is not 2,161 miles. It's 2,160 exactly. And how do these numbers correlate without there being some sort of astronomical knowledge that is far beyond what we give credit to our ancestors for?
I don't know how this shit doesn't keep you up at night, Mike, because you've been digging into it for a long time, but these are questions that would burn a hole through my head. And in preparing for this,
well, you got to learn to relax and watch a football game once in a while.
Yeah, well, I'm good at that, but thinking about this deep, it just goes to show. Well, let me ask you another question. I wasn't planning on asking you this. Why would this be kept a secret?
Okay. How about this? Let me give you a scenario here. I started working with Richard Hoagland. We were looking at ruins of ancient civilizations on the moon and on Mars. That's how I started in this whole process, at least in terms of being a public figure. So what if civilizations rise and fall, the old Atlantis civilization thing? What if that's the way it goes? If that's the way it goes, then the next question becomes, well, what caused this advanced civilization to fall? Because I look at some of the ruins on the moon, and it looks like human engineering and human architecture. So unless everything is universal in terms of how you build structures, it looks like people built it. And, the Hopis, they have legends that, this is the fourth age of man. We've been up, we've been down, we've been up, we've been down. The earth has been destroyed by fire. The earth has been destroyed by flood. The earth has been destroyed by lightning. They have all these different legends. So when you admit that civilization is cyclical, then you open up the door to catastrophism, which is meteors, comets, alien invasions, exploding planets in our own solar system can happen. And people are like, wait a minute, planets can explode? Don't we live on a planet? Can this planet explode? In other words, when you admit that your history is not true, that you can have these incredible collapses even after you reach the heights that we've reached here with our brand new AI sex bots that we're coming out with. When you reach that level, you can still be brought down to the Stone Age again by some external catastrophe. that's frightening to people. And that is inherently destabilizing to the body politic. And that means people are going to stop going to work. People are going to stop caring about, do I make enough money to buy a better house? I'm just going to live my life with my family. I'm going to move up to the mountains or whatever and check out. And that is what the people in charge, maybe even the secret societies behind them, do not want. Because so they're never going to admit that any of this stuff is true. They're going to have to basically we're going to have to put their arms behind their back, twist their arm and make them admit it, because they're not going to admit it voluntarily, because it is a threat to the existing cultural milieu that we've created.
Oh, you would think the Egyptians would come out and say, no, that's all bullshit what they're saying in the West. But here, I'm 54 years old. It took 54 years to see these numbers and say, my God, how do they move these stones to within 1/15th of a degree of true north? That's impossible.
The Egyptian government does like to say that, we built the pyramids, not aliens and not some other advanced civilization. But, they're trying to create a cultural identity that in a nation that doesn't have any, except the ancient Egyptian civilization, which was completely different. They were Caucasian, they were not African, they were not Arab, so they're trying to grab this legacy and take hold of it. And they do say things like that, but it's really not plausible that some ancient civilization was able to do these things with primitive tools.
I don't even know if it's possible that modern civilizations could do that when you're talking about using 10-ton blocks in the sand and getting it to that.
Megaliths at Baalbek are enormous. They're, I don't know, 40,000 tons. I don't know what they are. They're huge. And you literally couldn't move them with modern cranes. They couldn't be moved. So, but yet they were moved. They were moved and built, and temples were built back thousands of years ago before the Romans even came to Lebanon. So it's wild.
Yeah, this is why I'm intrigued by what you do and about learning about this in the Y-Files and other shows. So, all right, while we're on this subject, let's kind of stick to it. I noticed you talk about something called sacred geometry in ancient architecture. What is it, and what makes it special?
Well, there's an implication that there's this ancient system of knowledge, and it's not, it's not based on the metric system. Okay, it's based on the yard, the megalithic yard, the foot, the inch, what we call the imperial system today, which I believe came from very, very ancient sources of knowledge, probably antediluvian sources that knew that this was the mathematics of God, is how I look at it. This is the way God set up the universe. And if you understand these numbers and what they mean and how they interact, then you can unlock the secrets of God and the secrets of the universe, including the secrets to things like unlimited free energy types of devices. So I think that's why there's been a very concerted effort on the part of the elites to get us off of the traditional metric system, or not metric system, but the imperial system, and get us into the metric system, because there's no way you're ever going to figure out the mathematical significance of these alignments if you're in that system. In other words, if you measure things in meters, you're never going to be able to figure it out. But if you measure things in feet and miles and inches, you're going to be able to figure things out. And a prime example of that is the alignments of all of the objects at Cydonia on Mars, which is where the face on Mars is located. And there's pyramids around it and a city of pyramids. And there is a series of alignments, which when you pour out all the math, basically gives you the formula for unlimited energy, which I believe is why they were constructed the way they were constructed. So what they're trying to do is obscure that knowledge from mankind. They want to keep it for themselves and make sure that the average person doesn't figure it out, which then keeps us dependent on, fossil fuels and electricity they can charge for and things like that. So I think that's ultimately what's going on. When we talk about sacred geometry, I'm talking about the original traditional measurement systems, including going back to the ancient Egyptian cubit and all these different measurements. They're all connected in this geometry, which is how God constructed the universe.
How did Nikola Tesla figure that out?
Tesla was intuitive and understood, I think, the basics. But here's the problem, the way I see it, Andy, is that how did the pyramids get built without the technologies that we have today. Either they had much more advanced technologies, which we don't see, or they were able to do things differently. And one of the ways they may have been able to do things differently is use sound and vibration to negate the effects of gravity, to lift things and move them into place and take all the weight away. So you could, with a finger, move one of those 40-ton blocks into the right place and line it all up and cut it. Because back then, we were more directly connected to the source, the center of the galaxy, Sagittarius A. And what I think has happened is that in the last 3,000 to 5,000 years, we've moved into an area where there's more obscuration, there's more gas and dust clouds between us and the so-called source. So our intuitive energy, our magical abilities, if you will, which are actually just a technology, just a different technology than we use today, have faded. So we've had to focus on developing our conscious mind and our logical mind. And then now I think we're sliding back into an area where we're getting a more clear, direct line to the center of the galaxy, and therefore our knowledge of how to do things in different and new ways, which are actually old ways, is going to flourish again. So I look at it and I think, well, maybe they didn't use technology at all. Maybe they just hummed and chanted and knew how to use the frequency of energy to move things around, which is not, sounds very new agey and all that stuff, but there is a basis for it. That's what I found when I wrote The Choice in 2010, is that there is a basis for all this crystal vibration, new age stuff, if you think about it, if you really dig into it.
And I would implore people to go to the Y Files on YouTube. And the episode that we're kind of referencing here is called Tesla Knew the Secret of the Great Pyramid, Unlimited Energy to Power the World. Check it out. It's got 10 million views. So
yeah, so I think Tesla was just a guy who was very intuitive and understood basically how things were supposed to work. But that didn't please Mr. Edison very much.
No, and they talk about J.P. Morgan and all of his investments, and it would have. I mean, it's really an amazing, and everyone that I've made sit down and watch it, and the Hollow Moon, come away, first they're laughing at me, and then they say, "Oh my God, that was insane." And
that fish is really funny. That fish is hilarious. Yeah,
the fish is very funny. I agree, especially in this one, the lizard people. So, yeah, exactly. All right, just a couple more questions, but I hope I'm inspiring people to become inquisitive and look past the status quo. And everything's not just about precious metals and economics. There's a lot more to understanding the world and broadening your horizons. That's why I love having you on, Mike, and I appreciate you coming here. Two more questions, and this one's a little bit more, I guess. Well, I'd like to hear what you have to say. In all your research, what's the most compelling piece of evidence that you've ever found that makes you believe in the existence of ancient extraterrestrial visitors? I mean, obviously, talking about the pyramid and its alignment and the weight of the stones and moving it 500 miles, the length of Florida, and all of these things make you wonder how the hell that happened. But to you, in all of your research, because you've done the moon and Mars and other things, what is that one piece of evidence that's most compelling to you?
Well, there's actually a picture. It's up on my wall here behind me. You can't see it. It's above my head. And it's a picture of an area on Mars taken by NASA, pulled off the NASA website, super high resolution, of an area that I call Vatican City. And it is basically, there's a giant mud flow there. And what you see is the ruined foundations of an entire city, block after block, building after building. There is no natural explanation for that. And I can look at these pictures, and I don't have them here to show you, Andy. I can maybe send them to you after the show if you can intercut them.
Yeah, we'd be happy to link them. Absolutely.
And those, and the face on Mars, and just that picture. Nobody can look at that picture and reasonably argue that it is natural. There is just no way. So somebody built something on Mars a long, long time ago, and it was damaged and ruined, and now it's being uncovered and exposed, but it's artificial. And no reasonable person with a brain in their head can argue that it's anything but artificial. It looks exactly like the ruins of Berlin or Dresden after World War II, as seen from the air. It's phenomenal. And you throw in the face on Mars and the DNA pyramid, and I got a picture of taken by the Apollo 11 astronauts of a bunker cut into the side of a hill with a flying saucer in it, with landing gear and everything. And it's like, okay, that's it. And that's exactly what it is. And it can't be what you're seeing, because everything on the moon, if NASA is telling you the truth, has to be a crater, and that ain't no crater. So, it's the pictures that NASA themselves have sent back from these places.
What is the name of that place on Mars?
Cydonia, Cydonia. And there is a Y-Files episode on Cydonia, which I did help AJ write, which I would suggest you go watch also. Although
Right
AJ
on.
doesn't use the modern, more up-to-date pictures, but he should have. But.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to check that one out. All right. Well, just one more question for you, brother. One of the episodes that you contributed on was Solar Warden. And I watched it last night. Tell us about Solar Warden.
Well, Solar Warden is this rumored secret space program, and there's been this argument. We just had these UFO hearings yesterday. I refuse to use the phrase UAP, because they're UFOs. Yesterday in Congress, and there's all this talk about, are there secret space programs? And the answer is apparently, yeah, there are secret space programs that do exist. But Solar Warden is the one that a lot of the people who say, oh, I was part of the secret space program, guys like Corey Goode. I went to the Andromedan galaxy and met with the Andromedan Council, and we're defending ourselves against alien invaders. And there's a whole fleet of, Battlestar Galacticas out there with fighters. And I was a fighter pilot and all this stuff. And that's kind of nonsense. And to me, it's almost a cover for the real secret space program. I wrote a book called Hidden Agenda, NASA and the Secret Space Program, which talked about how we were working on developing flying saucer technology, anti-gravity technology, and appear to have had a breakthrough about 1959, way back. And so Solar Warden is the rumored name of this program. Now, it turns out Solar Warden is probably not a real thing, but the secret space program is probably real. And one of the most interesting aspects of that is that President Reagan, in his published diaries, there was a book published of his daily diaries in the White House, where he said, I had a briefing with the NASA guys today, or with the space guys. And we have a fleet right now of over 300 people in space. And like in 1986 or whatever this was, 300 people in space, the most the shuttle can carry is 7. So again, what is this program? And then in that episode, we speculate about what it might have been, the craft that might have been used. But basically, it implies that there is a secret space program. And you had Gary McKinnon, the UK hacker, who was looking around on computers at NASA and the Defense Department and found a list of, quote, non-terrestrial officers. In other words, military guys with their names who were assigned to specific spacecraft that were not on the Earth. Okay, so it exists. The secret space program exists. The question is, to what depth and to what end, and are we ever going to be told the truth?
Mike, you are a fascinating guy. How can people find out more about you and more about what we're talking about? Because the skepticism, I'm sure, runs as thick as can be until you open your eyes just a little bit and check this out. Because, and that's one of the things about the Y-Files, and I don't mean to keep throwing that name out, but it does such an amazing job at trying to balance these theories with science and mathematics and
logic.
Explanation,
yeah,
and logic. And that's why I'm such a big fan of watching it, trying to expand my mind. I will say the episode on the pyramid, I think, changed my thinking quite a bit. And I think there's a whole bunch of them out there people should watch, including some of the ones that you've written. How can people find out more about this and more about you and your work?
Yeah, well, I helped write them. AJ ultimately is the author of the show, but I did help with several of them, eight or nine of them now. And the thing that I vibe with AJ about is that, just like me, he only wants the truth, right? I'm a UFO researcher, but a lot of the stuff that's out there now that's being sold as alien spacecraft are, I think, conventional drones that can be pretty well easily explained through my experience in aerospace. So I only care about the truth, and AJ cares about the truth, and that's why it's a great show to watch. You can find me at mikebara.blogspot.com or just type Mike Bara, B-A-R-A in Google, and it should be the first or second link that comes right up. There you can get links to my books. My books are all on Amazon.com, or they might be available at Adventures Unlimited Press directly, is one of my publishers. You can pick up all the books there. I have multiple YouTube channels, which I've had to do to try to avoid the censorship. I once had a pretty sizable YouTube channel. I was on my way to the 100,000 subscribers plaque, and then they took me down during the political prescriptions of 2016. So I've been fighting that ever since. And all the links are there. I have a Rumble channel. I do a show called Real News Live with Mike and Jen, which is about finances and politics and stuff like that. And I got all my UFO stuff on there too. So just go to the blog spot. And the books, I would say, if you want to learn more about what we talked about today, I would recommend The Choice, which is my second book from 2010, where I talk about all the physics and all the consciousness stuff that's being shifted right now during this period in history. Hidden Agenda, which is about the secret space program, and Ancient Aliens and JFK, which is about the political aspects of things and how JFK was taken out because of what he was going to reveal about the alien presence on Earth. Those are my favorites. They're all great books. Pick them up on Amazon, and you can find me anywhere. And I'm on TV every week. I'm on TV 2, 3, 4 times a week. Some various UFO program I shot 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. They're on constantly. So you'll see me everywhere.
I don't know, man, maybe you were abducted and they made you look eternally young, because all that work you've done, you still look younger than I am. You look good, brother.
Thanks.
Mike, I appreciate you. I do very much. And I know this isn't exactly what we typically talk about on this show, but I hope I've expanded some people's minds a little bit. You and AJ have expanded mine. I appreciate you, man. I look forward to seeing you again real soon with Mark Z and maybe picking up where you and I left off here down the road. But in the meantime, I hope you stay well, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Again, and you too, Andy, and I love talking to you too, buddy. And you know,
bro.
I'm fascinated by everything, so let's talk about everything.
And then people should be, you know what?
Figure skating.
Put your guard down a little bit and just open your mind, and good things happen. Like I've often said, you know, if you don't listen and open your mind, you end up learning more and more about less and less till you know everything about nothing. So thanks for helping expand my mind, brother.
All right. See you soon, Andy. Thank you.
Little by Little with Andy Schectman.